So thank you for joining us today for our Selling More Cyber webinar. My name is Emmeline Reed and I'm on the business operations team here at SEMSI. We have a lot of really great information to share with everyone today, and I'm excited to introduce you to our presenters in just a second. But first, one thing to note, if you have questions related to the content of today's webinar, please feel free to type those into the Q&A widget that's at the bottom of your screen, and we'll go through them during the Q&A session today. On to the main event. We're so excited to be partnering with cyber insurer Cowbell Cyber to give you some simple solutions for selling cyber and to showcase how we make quoting cyber coverage for your clients quick and easy. I'm excited to introduce you to Dan Law, Director of National Accounts at Cyber, and Aaron Dyer, Strategic Accounts Manager. Aaron and Dan will serve as a resource to all SEMSI agents who choose to work with Cowbell on our platform. Cowbell Cyber is dedicated to providing standalone, admitted, individualized, and easy to understand cyber insurance for small and mid-sized businesses. In its unique AI-based approach to risk selection and pricing, Cowbell and SEMSI compress the insurance process from submission to issue to less than 5 minutes. Cowbell Insurance Agency is currently licensed in 50 US states and the District of Columbia and provides small and mid-sized businesses with admitted cyber insurance on AM Best A-rated paper. And I'll hand it over to the Cowbell team now.
Thanks, Emmeline. Sorry, I was just choking a bit. I got so excited hearing you talk about Cowbell. All right. So we're grateful, everyone, for your time today, and are excited to talk a little. Sorry, I'm going to take some water. One sec. All right, good start. We're grateful for everybody's time today and are excited to talk a little bit about cyber coverage and why it's critical for your clients and how to easily sell the coverage. So over the last few weeks, hackers have demanded large amounts of ransom from big companies, right? Holding parts of the economy hostage, even for anybody on the East Coast. You know this from the gas shortage. So yes, the current wave of cyber attacks threaten the stability of our economy, but it's critical to understand that these events are not exclusive to large corporations. So half of cyber attacks affect small businesses, but many are unaware of the risk simply because their cyber incidents go unreported or they remain in denial, seeing larger companies as more probable targets because of media coverage focused on major incidents at known brands. But the reality is, if your client is using email, Wi-Fi, or an online payment service, they have an exposure. And even in the scenarios where JBS or Colonial Pipeline are compromised, there are supply chain impacts that do affect small businesses that a cyber insurer can provide coverage for. Okay. So focusing specifically on small business, in a post-COVID world, small businesses are more aware of and interested in threats to their longevity. Plus, many businesses have seen an increase in cyber exposure with more employees working from home using their own networks and devices. Yet 14% of small businesses are ready to defend themselves in the event of a breach. So that leaves us, while we're here today, with a lot of opportunity for agents like you to step in, and we think SEMSI is making it especially easy for you to do so. So what we know is that cybersecurity as a whole has proven insufficient for small businesses, which is why insurance, the transfer of risk, is going to be critical moving forward. We also know the government's beginning to get more involved in trying to protect businesses appropriately with recommendations and even potential legislation. And we saw some of this as recently as this morning. And lastly, SEMSI makes it easy. SEMSI makes it easy for you to quote monoline cyber alongside other coverages, meaning you could present a cyber quote to every client you service, and you should. So on today's call, we'll talk about how standalone cyber liability coverage best protects your clients in the wake of a cyber incident. We'll talk about how and why small businesses are purchasing cyber. We'll talk about how Cowbell and SEMSI help align coverages with small businesses' unique needs. And lastly, we'll give a quick demo just showing how easy it is to quote Cowbell on SEMSI. And as a quick plug, every time you request a cyber quote on SEMSI, as you'll see, there's no referrals. So it's our goal to get a quote in your hands quickly every single time. Okay, so let's start with the topic of recovering quickly from a cyber incident. And sometimes it's easier to think about cyber coverage through a more familiar lens. So we'll take the example of a pizza restaurant who has a car accident while delivering some pizzas. The next steps here to recover from their incident are clear, right? You're going to assess the damage, call your tow truck, get on the phone with the insurance folks, scoop your rental, and you're back to work almost immediately. So what happens in the event a small business discovers a cyber incident? Do they call 911? Do they call their lawyer? Do you contact the FBI? My favorite, are you calling Best Buy? What do you do next? What's the plan? So that's why we're here today. A small percentage of businesses, as we mentioned, have an incident response plan. The rest don't. Another fun fact I'll throw at you, 25% of the small businesses file for bankruptcy protection after a data breach, right? So just in general, the takeaway there is small businesses are not prepared for today's cyber environment. In fact, I think asking a client if they have an incident response plan might be all that's needed to drive the value of a cyber policy that you're instantly pulling off of SIMSY's platform. So in the event there is a cyber incident, there's really just one action a business needs to take upon discovery, and that's calling Cowbell or their cyber provider. So a standalone cyber option provides a plan and expertise in the event of an incident. Okay, so on the screen here are some examples of how a cyber insurer expedites incident recovery. There are security experts typically and insurance experts on call and ready to help immediately with a full range of post-incident recovery services. As an example, a business might have an incident where unauthorized access to an email account is compromised and personally identifiable information is leaked. So post-breach activities within that example might be an instant investigation to identify who in fact was impacted. You would send a notification to all of your customers, and your insurance provider would help provide 1-year credit monitoring for all customers impacted. So the takeaway here is that these services help protect both the customers, right, and their information that's been leaked, as well as the business's reputation and longevity moving forward. And they give the business an actionable plan on the morning when they walk into their small business bakery and their systems are held for ransom. Okay, so taking a little bit of a step back, outside of the response plan, the compensation for loss and mitigation of exposure are the pillars of cyber insurance, right? And at a high level, cyber insurance exists to protect businesses from 2 essential exposures: security and privacy. So security means the breach of controls put in place by a business, and privacy means information that was meant to be protected getting into the wrong hands. So we categorize our coverage across these exposures into first-party expense, first-party loss, and third-party liability services. And despite or maybe due to the increase in cyber incidents, many commercial insurance policies can't or purposely exclude protection across these 3 categories in the wake of a cyber incident. So for comparison purposes, we'd like to review Cowbell's standalone coverage compared to a BOP endorsement, just to show you what that looks like. So BOP endorsements, while helpful, like I mentioned, are not meeting the needs of small business today, given the cyber environment. And hackers, in fact, are targeting small businesses, knowing they might not have a dedicated security personnel or the proper controls in place, which is where you as their agents come in to help. So typically with BOP endorsements, when you're selling a client and upgrading them to a standalone policy, you know that BOP endorsements are going to lack details, have extremely low coverage limits, are not dedicated solely to cyber. They have higher rate of claim denials, and claims tend to be handled by generalists, not dedicated cyber experts. So in partnership with SIMSY, Cowbell will offer you a standalone admitted policy with limits ranging from $50,000 to $3 million, all dedicated solely to cyber exposure. So here's some coverages I like to highlight when you're upgrading a client from a BOP endorsement to a standalone policy. The first is business interruption, which you see here on the screen. And as most everybody knows, that's a coverage for when a policyholder is unable to conduct business due to a cyber incident or extortion threat, which we know can sometimes take days or longer to recover from. So that's a critical coverage that you're going to access from a standalone policy. We also have cybercrime, aka social engineering, and behind ransom this is probably the biggest buzzword that will resonate with your clients when presenting them with these policies. So think phishing emails, right? That's a type of incident that triggers this coverage. And phishing has spiked over 300% since the start of the pandemic. And that's a coverage you're going to get through standalone, not an endorsement. Extortion threats. So this is the big one. Coverage for loss from an extortion threat dedicated or discovered during the policy periods. This is dedicated coverage specifically to those ransom events. This can include companies and resources to determine the validity and severity of the threat. So, hey, how real is this ransom threat? We'll offer coverage to reward payment that leads to the arrest of the bad actors and the ransom payment itself. So like I've said, this to me is probably the most important coverage to lead with alongside business interruption when you're walking your clients through the proposal. And you'll also see dedicated coverages for the cost to restore and replace electronic data lost in an event that you're not going to have on a BOP endorsement, and hardware replacement costs for destroyed computers, tablets, etc., giving you new equipment after the incident. Oops, sorry. Okay, so here's a visual of all the coverages available through SEMCI's platform. We have first party, which covers the cost of data breach or cyber attack on the policyholder. Simple terms, it's coverage for claims the insured is going to bring against itself in the wake of a cyber incident. Cowbell has customizable coverage you can build within SEMCI instantly, which Emmeline's going to show you in a bit. But to walk through a few additional coverage examples here, we have public relations expense, which helps the client restore their reputation in response to negative publicity following a cyber incident or security breach. This includes, for example, PR firm fees to handle external communication if you have a breach. And if you think about it, many of the coverages accessed from a standalone policy help with reputational harm, like the security breach response that we mentioned earlier with the credit monitoring, right? It's going to bring goodwill back to your clients. Another one we haven't touched on yet is post-breach remediation. So this covers labor costs to implement upgrades or improvements that reduce the probability of a potential damage from a future incident. So essentially, Cowbell makes sure that once you have an incident, it's not going to happen again. And that's through the post-breach remediation coverage. And then we have third party, which is just what you think when you think of typical liability coverage. For cyber, this can include defense expenses, damages, settlement amounts, regulatory fines, and penalties. In the event of a data breach, as an example, a business can expect class action lawsuits, regulatory fines, and costs that would be covered under these insuring agreements. So here's a real life example of a cyber incident from a manufacturing risk, which is an industry that has a piqued interest in cyber coverage. So a bad actor gained access to a company's website. In this incident, payment card information provided on the company's website from clients was collected over a 5-day period of time. Not good. Customers' names, credit card numbers, and the CCV, the security code, was also collected. So here we would see first party and third party coverage in place, such as the security breach expense to notify customers, business income coverage while reestablishing the network, payment card, industry costs and fees affiliated with the breach. We have PR coverage to help mitigate harm and improve the reputation afterwards. And then that post-breach remediation. Let's find out what caused this and make sure it doesn't happen again. So these are just some examples, right? It's not everything, but these are just some examples for you to think about when having these conversations with your clients of where standalone coverage comes into play. Okay, so here are some recent examples of accounts we wrote for brokers that highlight small businesses purchasing cyber with a range of limits. Fun fact, the auto dealership in the middle is a Bentley car dealership out in Vegas. It's one of my favorite accounts that we've written, but let's focus on the realtor example. So we have a one-man or one-woman shop at 30K in revenue who's able to instantly purchase standalone coverage through the SEMCI platform. And this coverage is going to have dedicated limits for ransom, social engineering, and a lot of the other terms we've discussed. So why would one realtor purchase cyber? And if you think about it, it makes sense, right? They have a lot of records and handle many transactions on the fly. A cyber incident for a realtor might lead to the compromise of their client's financial data and thus could harm their reputation. Incidents could also lead to the access to clients' financial files being blocked, which, as we know, realtors work on a timeline, right? Everything's time sensitive. And the cost to replace and restore these files would be covered only by a standalone policy with data restoration coverage. So I've just rattled off a lot of examples as to why a realtor might purchase cyber, and we make it easy for our agents to do the same. Our website holds these industry-specific one-pagers that you're looking at on the screen that you can pull and present alongside your quotes or use internally for talking points over the phone. And actually, they're publicly available, so whether you trade with us or not, please feel free to go and access these to learn more about a few industries your brokerage might focus on from a cybersecurity standpoint. So from here, I'll toss it over to Dan to highlight some of Cowbell's specific value if you do elect to trade with us on CIMC.
Wonderful. Thank you, Erin. And I see we have a question here about minimum client requirements and things. I'll try to tackle that sort of in the framework of how Cowbell operates and how through the CIMC platform, we're making it as easy as possible to quote cyber coverage for virtually any client that you're going to have. So I also wanted to frame real quick, and we talk a lot about the BOP endorsement. A hot topic these days is also silent cyber, wherein you as the insurance agent or the insured might be reliant upon a policy that doesn't necessarily strictly exclude cyber coverage, and you're just hoping that it will exist in the event of a claim. We're finding those policies really not to pan out, and there's too much case law now around it where those events are being excluded. And with the BOP endorsements, we used to frame cyber in conversations. When I used to be an insurance agent, I spent 20 years doing that in my career. We used to frame it in just about the number of records and notification costs, and that's really all that there was to cyber in the past. And that's just not holding true anymore. It is the lost income from business downtime, somebody holding your records for ransom, a ransom payment, the reputational injury that comes along with it. Those things are now driving the recent claims trends with cyber throughout the country. So taking it from there, I just wanted to describe a little bit about Cowbell and CIMC, sort of our footprint and where you can find us available for your customers. Erin, if you want to give me the next slide there. As we alluded to, we've got admitted coverage available through the CIMC platform, which eliminates the need for taxes and fees and all of that fun stuff that people get to deal with. Our current distribution is, I believe this to be about 38 states for that product on an admitted basis. We are adding states into the fold every day, every week, with the goal of being admitted in all 50 states for our Prime 100 policy that you're going to see on the platform. That policy can handle insureds up to 100 million in revenue, which is mostly unheard of in the cyberspace, and do it on an admitted basis with instant decisions and very few questions. So how do we do that and have such a broad appetite? You'll see below here the declines, the things that we don't do. We don't do municipalities, we don't do school districts. We don't do online gambling, we don't do cryptocurrency, and we don't do cannabis. Virtually every other class code you can think of fits within our approved class list and is something you can get an instant decision on for a business with 100 million in revenue. It just doesn't happen anywhere else in the marketplace. And Emmeline will show you that process in a little bit. Accounts we love: construction, manufacturing, healthcare, lots of CPA offices, dental offices, small health clinics, and things like that. Professional services are a big class of business for us. So how are we able to do this, Campbell? You asked about client requirements in order to provide cyber. So we have within our risk pool and with our methodology here at Cowbell, we have 13 million businesses in our database, in our platform, that we are assessing their cyber risk actively on a daily basis. So what you need to know from that is in real time, basically, we're already pinging firewalls. We're scraping the dark web. We're doing everything that we can, pulling about 600 outside-in data points on 13 million businesses to determine their cyber scoring as we see it and their acceptability to us. So what we have painstakingly done in building this whole artificial intelligence engine is eliminated the need to have you fill out a lot of questions. So you don't have to go and fill out a bunch of information about the client. We are going to just take a couple of data points that you're going to fill in on the SEMC platform, answer a couple of yes/no questions, and if it fits, we'll be able to return a quote. I see another question. Who insures Cowbell? That's for me to know. We painstakingly protect all this data that we have behind various levels of security and multi-factor authentication and everything else that we deal with, but very good question. So what you can expect out of us, and we understand that selling cyber to small and medium-sized businesses is an educational process. Up until this past year, the uptake rate was in the low single digits for people that bought standalone coverage. That has ballooned during the pandemic. We have seen those rates grow astronomically. People are buying cyber, small businesses are buying cyber, and we at Cowbell and SEMC are at the forefront of it, recognizing that need and delivering an admitted product. So what do we do for you to empower the sale? On every proposal that you get out of us, we're going to give you coverage terminology, as you'll see here on the left-hand side, explaining in layman's terms what the coverage items are to help you educate the client. Then we also provide our Cowbell factors, our proprietary risk scoring on each one of those businesses. So you can show the client how they compare against their industry peers. So what we do is, with all that risk scoring and all the data we collect, we effectively compare every potential insured against their industry peers out there in the marketplace to determine their go, no go from an underwriting standpoint and eventually some of their pricing. So what else are we doing? Great, we do the risk scoring. You give that to the client. They don't know what any of that means or what to do about it or how to improve their score. Every insured gets accessed on day one to the Cowbell platform, where we show them the secret sauce, basically, and what we've found out there in the world on their risk profile. So if we're finding open ports, we will identify that. If we found information on the dark web, we will identify that. And we will give them actionable insights into what they can do to improve their scoring and fix gaps in their security posture. Aaron alluded to this earlier. Insurance is the respond and recovery mechanism to a cyber incident. We want to help our clients close that loop and provide the upfront risk management tools so an incident never takes place. So within our platform, we are driving training to every single one of our insureds, phishing simulations, all of those things free of charge that they can undertake and put in place for their staff. So all of this is wonderful information, and you know, we designed it to help the agent sell the cyber coverage and put it in the hands of their clients. Our thought is really somebody's going to do it. We'd prefer it be, you know, the agents that are working with us rather than your competitors out there. And to that end, partnering with SEMC and getting it into the hands of more people is very important to us. And I think on that, we're going to have Emmeline run through the platform a bit.
Great, thanks, Dan. Okay. So hopefully all of you are familiar with what the SEMC dashboard looks like, so I won't explain too much what I'm doing here. But let's say that I have a contractor who is one of my clients and we quoted his workers' comp last week. I talked to him a little bit about the benefits of cyber and he's interested in getting a quote. I'm gonna look for Ed in my my SEMC database and I can see Ed's carpentry. It exists already, so I'll go ahead and select that from my previous application. He is a Finnish carpentry contractor and that's pulled in from our last application together. And I'll be able to click next. The mailing address is the primary business location for Ed. It's pulled in for me. As you all probably know, we can get this from a few places like our Google Maps integration, a previous application, or if you are using Hawksoft, we can pull it in from your AMS. I will take a quick look at the contact information. That is still correct from our last application together. And SEMC is going to make sure that I'm using the address that conforms to the USPS database requirements, just to make sure that this is going to be accepted by all of your carriers. So I will use this adjusted address. Like I said, we already quoted with this client for their workers' comp policy. Now we're interested in just the cyber. I could select cyber alongside any of the other policy types that are available on SEMC if I wanted to for a different client. Cowbell is our first partner for the standalone cyber product on SEMC. And so I'll go ahead and select them. And I can see that my business classification has already been suggested to me by the SEMC platform, although I could search if I wanted to for a different one. But we're really buzzing through this. You can see that there aren't very many sections for me to review for this application for cyber, and I'll just start going through. So this is a private business. It is independent. Finish carpentry. Ed does have a website. And he's only got one. He's been around for around 21 years. The location address is pulled in for me from my upfront information, so I can just take a quick look and click continue. This is not a franchise. I have his revenue from our last application together, and it is a single employee. It's just Ed. Now we get to the interesting part, the coverage part. We want this policy to start on Monday. And I'm going to request $1 million for my policy limit. We're going to go with a $5,000 deductible and $2,500 for our business income and extra expenses endorsement limit. I can also add some more coverages to this policy. And if I want to, I can see a little bit more information on all of these policies by clicking the little question mark, or all of these coverages. I'll go through and select the additional coverages and endorsements that I want, and you can see that the sublimit pops out for me when I pick those. Once I get through the cyber coverage policy information, I get to the qualifying questions, and there aren't very many. I haven't had a claim. The policyholder will be the security contact. There will be training, and Cowbell can provide this training to the insured. They do store some sensitive information on the cloud, but it is encrypted. And if you're curious about whether it's encrypted, most of the major email services are encrypting the information that's sent through them. You can do some research online or reach out to your provider for more information. Erin and Dan, is there anything else that you'd want to add before we click to get through?
No, I think you hit the main points. Specific to the training, we're not asking for the policyholder to implement training. We're just asking if they're simply willing. And free cybersecurity awareness training is one of the services we offer to all of our policyholders free of charge. So hopefully if they're getting it for free, they're willing, and that's really what we're asking there.
And so as we went through this application, a lot of these questions, especially in the first 3 sections, are questions that you're going to be asked for the other lines of business as well. And so those will all be rolled up if you're doing a multi-line application in the SEMC platform. And then there are just a small number of additional questions that are required for this cyber policy. So I get to my review and submit page, I'll click review and submit, and it's going to send this application through to Cowbell. And if I just refresh my page, here we are with a quote from Cowbell for Ed. And so it's a really easy way to add some value and to add another important line of business and coverage for your client.
And we would encourage you that for those first-time cyber buyers or the people that are coming off a BOP endorsement, it's very easy to quote a small limit option to get them interested, to get them to understand what it is at a small dollar value. You may then come in with a second option of a recommended coverage limit that you have for them. You may want $2 or $3 million worth of coverage, and that's what you're going to tell them they should buy. But you could also show them a $500,000 limit just as a means of, if you're going to buy, if you don't want to buy anything, at least buy this one. We find that to be pretty effective talking points for some of the smaller insureds out there.
And like I said, Cowbell is our first partner for the standalone cyber policy on the SEMC platform. If you're not already working with Cowbell, you can actually request appointment right on the SEMC platform when you select cyber for the first time. So we want to make it really easy for you to start working with Cowbell. and there's just a button that you click and it sends a request to the Cowbell team. So I'll stop screen sharing now. I think we do have a few questions for our Q&A portion. I think it probably makes the most sense for me to read the questions and the Cowbell team to answer them, unless they're SEMC specific. So I'll go ahead and start. Although it seems like some of these are just, so the Cowbell team, SEMC, we're happy to share the information from this webinar. We are recording it, so there will be a video available. And Dan said that we're able to share the slides, so we'll email those to you in a follow-up.
I can take the last one, Emmeline. I see one about does the quote include the score page you showed? And the answer there is yes. So on the third page of our quote proposal, we list the aggregate score as well as the score specific to each of the Cowbell factors for the client to review. And I'll also say Cowbell has a risk engineer team on staff. So if you'd like for us to meet with the client as you're proposing the quote, and you'd want someone to come in with a security background to speak to some of those Cowbell factor scores or some of the insights we might have to improve those scores, we're happy to have our risk engineer team coordinate a call.
Great, and we're happy to answer any other questions if you want to type them into that Q&A box in the next couple of minutes.
Might be the most questions we've ever had on a panel call. That's great.
Great, and there's also lots of information on the Cowbell website. I don't know if we'll get any more live. So hopefully we all feel a bit more knowledgeable on why the right cyber coverage is so important for small and medium-sized businesses. SEMC is so excited to give you the ability to quote Cowbell Cyber for your clients and even request appointment right in the SEMC platform. If there is something else on your mind, you have another question, or would like to learn more about Cowbell and how we work together, be on the lookout for a follow-up email that's going to include Erin's contact information. She's going to be a great resource for you if you have additional questions. Thank you so much, Dan and Erin, for putting together this really informative presentation for our agents. And thanks to everyone who joined us for your time and interest today. As we love to say at SEMC, happy quoting. Looking forward to seeing you in the platform.
Thank you so much. We appreciate the audience.
Thanks, everybody.